to speak tonight is sick. And of course, it's so un-PC to cough now. So you're getting me. So I know you're never supposed to apologize first off before you give a presentation, but I only had about an hour to do this afternoon. So so there might be spelling mistakes. I'm not quite sure what's happened there. So anyway, the title, Invasives, who'd want them? And this is woolly nightshade.
Oh, I know you're not going to tell us. You're going to ask the audience.
Oh, wait, you want me to quiz you?
Come on.
Yeah, but you could
Make it interactive. I wouldn't answer.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's your favorite plant, so that's why I put it on the cover.
Plus, it's the easiest one.
Yeah.
Usually, yeah. So right. So some things, and Bruce might have covered this last week, but yeah. So we have yes, more exotics than you can shake a stick at. So and these were introduced for a number of reasons: for forestry, agriculture, horticulture. And more than half of New Zealand's area is dominated by exotic plants, is what I read today. And if you think about it with the forestry that we have, so I mean, I guess the parts that are vegetated, you know, for the most part, you know, over half of those are, pine plantations or, big areas of just weeds. And if you think about, you know, we might have native overstory or a canopy, but underneath there can be a whole bunch of weeds coming through. And I remember when I was doing work for the council and we were looking at people's areas that they were classifying as SEA. So this was in the beginning when they were first doing the unitary plan. And I was sent out to look through people's SEAs, their significant ecological areas. And there was this one area and I thought, oh no, this looks good. This is all, you know, Kaikatia. But I got in there and I was literally up to my shoulders in climbing asparagus. And it was, you were just tripping, and it's like, unless someone does something about this forest is gone. You know, this won't last another 300 years or 200 years even. So, because nothing will be allowed to come up underneath. Hi, Nikki. Hi. Yeah, sorry, it's me tonight. So, apologies. Anyway, so yes, so there's lots of different reasons, and of course with all our agriculture as well, you can think about maize crops. You know, I suppose it's at certain times of year, but again, in exotics, not all exotics are invasive. But all invasives, for the most part, are exotic. The only one I can think of is bindweed, which is a convolvulus or a calistegia. There's some exotic bindweeds, but there's also some native ones. But some people consider those pest plants, even though they're native. And that's just because they sprawl and tangle and everything else. So these are approximate figures. So approximately 2,500 exotics have naturalized. And that's just ones that people have brought over, and then they have established themselves in the wild. But yeah, with you can figure about approximately 20,000 additional exotics can be found in gardens. So every little thing that people have loved to plant, and that 1 to 2 of these. Bruce said this last week. 1 to 2 of these garden exotics are naturalized every year. So they, you know, birds or whatever find a way to spread them, and they can get out of control. Does anyone know what this one is here? Selaginella, Cassiana. So. I consider this one of the worst ones. It is virtually impossible to get rid of, except someone told me unless you use triple strength Roundup, which kills everything, you know? But I saw people one time in the Cascades like picking these out along the path, and then after an hour they actually just gave up. And these, so it looks like a little nice delicate fern, but the spores on these, you just track them through on the bottoms of your feet. And so they'll just track along an entire walking track. And like I said, just one spore, and you know, it's out of control. So, and they do have some of these in Kohe Valley Bush. It's a small amount, so we might be able to control it. But yeah, I hate this one because it likes either shade or sun. And that's with a lot of exotics. Sometimes they might do really well in the sun, but they won't penetrate a forest, so you don't have to worry about them getting into native bush because they only like the sunshine. But things like this and Tradescantia, oh no, they're perfectly fine in the shade.
Where do you find it?
You can find it everywhere. It is a lot in the Cascades.
What's the Cascades?
Oh, in out west, sort of. Yeah. So
Waitaparis.
Waitaparis.
Oh, okay. Down at the bottom, I think. Oh yeah, it's on Peru.
And how big is it? How big is that?
I mean, like it's just a little brown dwelling. Oftentimes you see it like on the sides of embankments, just like along a path. So yeah, nasty thing. today, so this is a publication that came out this year. So of the study was done. So of about like our natives naturalized environmental weeds. So like exotics that have naturalized, and then I guess of those 314 have gone invasive, are the real baddies. So and I have to apologize because I haven't had a lot of time to look at this yet. So we have our different classifications. So dicots, that's your flowering plants or trees, things that become wood. Monocots are things like cabbage trees, so they don't have secondary growth, so no wood. And then gymnosperms, so your pines, and ferns and allies is what that actually says there. And so of your dicots, these are sort of the different families that are quite big, and so so out of 1,485 different specimens, I guess. So Asteraceae seems to be a big one, and that's like the same family as daisies, Asteraceae. And then Apiaceae is like the carrot family. Brassicaceae, I think of broccoli. Rubiaceae, like a coffee plant. Those are those families. And Plantagenaceae. I'm trying to remember what that one is. But anyway, so, but that's the percentage of how many are natives, and then a few of the other things naturalized. So, again, we can see this one. We do have a lot of invasives. It's basically what it's boiling down to. And think about all the pines. So in the gymnosperms, what percentage are pines? And then you have like your Crustaceae, so like your Macrocarpas, and Ericaceae, so those are like, that's the cowrie family. So you have, but we've got a lot of Queensland cowrie that they love to plant for street trees. Drives me bonkers, but anyway. So Taxaceae are like your yew plants. So in environmental weeds, probably Contorta is one of the bad pines. That's one that goes quite invasive. Anyway, a few things going there.
Does that contorta, is that like the one boulder and
Wilding pines? Yeah. So anyway, so I thought I'd go through just some of the ones that we see in our neighborhood. There are so many I could have done, and I only had an hour to put this together, so apologies. And I have done a sheet anyway. We've made up a front and back of some of the ones that I see most common in the Eastern Bays and how to control them. So we can hand that out afterwards. So climbing asparagus, that's the one that I was talking about that can just get so tangly up to your shoulders. It has these berries, and that's one of the ways it's propagated, and plus it just continues to trail. So one thing, if you can find the root of it, dig out the tubers because they are underground, pull it very carefully. Spraying, I know, so with all of these, you've got your manual control, you've got your chemical control, and then sometimes you have a biocontrol that you can use as well. Some people I know are really against sprays, and you do have to be careful when you're by waterways. All of the control methods that I have here are best practice from either Weed Busters or the council website. And so that's something that you can utilize as well. Go on, say, okay, what is this? How can I get rid of it? And I know sometimes too with Weed Busters, if I don't know what something is, I just scroll through the pictures until I say, yeah, that looks right. And then I find out how to control it from there. So just so you know, that's sort of what I've done here. But so, easy to dig out, but you just really have to collect it all up together and sort of make sure that those tubers can't reroot in the ground because, so I just sort of hang them up somewhere to dry out and die. Glyphosate, which there's also glyphosate green, and I think for most things you can use glyphosate green in place of glyphosate, but some of the really nasty ones, sometimes glyphosate green doesn't work as well. So, so you can spray, but just do it at certain times of year when you're not going to have big winds. Yeah.
Jillana, for any of these things, is there any non-chemical treatment that works using, for example, heat, using steam or using low temperatures?
I mean, it's not one of the best practice things, but I know that steam is becoming, you can use that. And also another thing that I've heard of it, instead of spraying like glyphosate, sometimes vinegar.
Yeah.
People have used that, but I can't guarantee what it's going to kill. Like it could kill native stuff in there as well.
I've tried vinegar and salt solution in my own yard, and I really didn't get good results with it.
You didn't? No, yeah. So, but I have heard steam with some things as well. But
New Zealand vinegar is not strong enough. You don't get the super cleaning, super strict cleaning.
yeah.
Add some canola to it.
The blowtorch is pretty good on household weeds. And the great thing about the blowtorch is you can get it right, if you do it in a lawn, you can get it right.
You are.
Yes, there are all kinds of
Blowtorch on a
methods.
stick.
Don't blame me.
As long
what
as you don't create a
happens.
forest fire.
Burn your
summer.
garden.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, but this is one that if you see it, just pull it as soon as you can because it can very easily get out of control very quickly. Ginger, wild ginger. This is another one that's, oh gosh, it drives me crazy. And you have to be careful with this one because they're all are these rhizomatous roots. So you have to really dig it out. And this is one that, hey, likes the shade as well. So I just keep thinking about, we walked through Coe Valley Forest and it was like, oh, the ginger in there was so tall. And there was so much of it and it was right by the stream, so you wouldn't be able to spray with glyphosate or something like that. So anyway, yeah, it says the ones in the shade, so produce few or no seeds. So yeah, you can start on the edges where there is light and then work your way in because you know that those shouldn't reseed too bad. But yeah, so it does say cut down and paint stumps all year round. So you can do a metasulfur and gel. And so cut and paste is probably, especially if you're near waterways, it's not as bad as if you were just to blanket spray. So yeah, or you can dig them out, but remember you got to get all those roots that go with it. So yeah, it's just, but it does say don't compost, but leave on site or hang the rhizomes in trees because they survive indefinitely, which is a really fun thought. But anyway. Yeah, or you can burn them, or there's special refuse transfer stations that you can dispose weeds at. So, but yeah, if it's not by a stream area, you can spray, but add a penetrant in the wintertime just to help it stick a little bit better. So yeah.
So Jillana, if you cut one, is it going to move into the bunch of rhizomes that it's attached to? You cut and then paste. How many?
Yeah.
How deep will that paste go? Will
I
it
would
just take
guarantee
one
that it
plant
would
out?
go.
It won't take the others out?
No, I think it would probably stick.
Because they sort of grow, they die, and then the sort of one end grows, but the other end seems to be dead. But it's not, it's just dormant, is it? And
I would imagine so, because if you think about like how things can sprout, like a rhizomatous root, and it can come out from sort of all different ends. So if there's a little bit left over that's alive, it'll just start regrowing from there. So yeah, again, get it while you can. So anyway, another fun one. This is my personal favorite at this time of year, Chinese privet. It's what sparks my allergies, and I never had allergies until I moved up to Auckland 10 years ago. So yeah, I mean it's quite a fragrant flower. I'm not a floral person, and it just drives me absolutely. My eyes, swell up everything. But there is a good homeopathy remedy if you want for this. I can give it to you. So yeah, and it's just with this thing, it just sends shoots out. You know it by it's quite the opposite leaves. We have tree privet as well, so this is Chinese privet. It's more like a bush privet, but you see it a lot in hedges as well. And it does get these berries, and it's just amazing how it just reseeds, sprouts up. I'm constantly pulling out shoots, and again, get it while it's really, really small, because even if it just sort of gets to this height, it's really hard to pull out as well. Yeah, so, but it does say you can dig out the stump or swab with glyphosate. This is a fun one because there's been a lot of talk for me over the last few years about how do you identify toy versus pampas. some people say, oh, well, pampas, the undersides, the leaves curl up, or, you know, it's at certain times of year that one's flowering but not the other, or, oh no, the toy just looks much fluffier and nicer. But these are all just, you know, that's sort of a matter of opinion in some cases, but I have found the tried and true way is that with the pampas, if you look at one of the leaves, there is a definite midvein in it, a raised midvein. You can see it there and there a little bit better, and there's only one. It's midvein, but as a toy, it actually has multiple creases along it. So that is the only one that I've actually been able to find that sticks, that holds true with every single one that you see. Because you have, like, pampas, different ones flower at different times of year too, so you might think, oh, well, it's toy flowering time, but actually there's pampas flowering at that time too.
Can you just tell me, please, why pampas is so nasty? Is it because it overtakes everything else? Or?
Yeah, oftentimes, yeah, and it's sharp, it hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's the way it does with the way, you know, it seeds. It sort of blows off in the wind as well. I'm pretty sure it's wind dispersed. So, but it does just get absolutely gigantic. And so, in some cases, you know, it says you can dig out by hand, but if it gets too big, you need a bulldozer or a digger to actually, because it's such a substantial plant. They just get huge. So,
I've
I
seen
mean,
it all around the world. It's not in New Zealand about this.
Oh,
yes.
Everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, these are all invasive, yeah. So, but toy is, you know, that's our native one. But yeah, but that's the main difference. So if you're ever wondering about, well, what is the difference between the two, that's the one that I have found that, you know, single midvein, and then, yeah, it's this one. It's the way to do it. Oh, but how to get rid of them. So yeah, dig out plants, or there is a foliar spray. This one, it says you can use glyphosate green. So yeah, and you just need to really be careful about the concentrations that you're using, because sometimes you're like, oh, well, yeah, I'm using triclopyr, it's fine, but you might actually have a strong enough dose to do the killing. So, and always, please, as your health and safety warning, read the directions and apply properly. So, and don't go like spraying without a mask. Anyway, they're your lungs. So yeah, moth plant. This is the one that I'm sure most of you know. Glenn is just known for moth plant. They've been trying to get rid of this on Taku Island for ages, but it keeps blowing back over from the mainland. And so, so I always find this one's really, really easy to tell. The leaves, they're always quite wavy as well, and you get these flowers which are also sort of like wavy. But then you get these seed pods, and not like they're different than chocos because you don't eat them. Inside, if you break them open, there's like 100,000 seeds in there that just blow in the wind. And so, you like my gesture? So yeah, and that's just how it goes crazy. And so you usually, when it starts growing again, yeah, pick it up. Often do it with gloves because it has a white latex sap that's the skin irritant. And so it'll start burning your skin. And just make sure you're wearing a shirt or pants that you do not care about, because it'll go solid on there too, and like those clothes are ruined afterwards if you get that on there. So again, yeah, be careful. I'll usually use gloves when you're doing this. Pulling them out, you can just pull it very gently and make sure you get the roots with it, or you can, yeah, so pulling it off, or you can cut them and yeah, paint with torn on brush color. So, or the Vigilant gel, that works as well. So, but you just really, yeah, and they can get huge. That was, so, Edward just showed me a picture, and what was it? The trunk was about this big of moth plant. So, very well established, grows like crazy, can spread like mad, and it, you know, why did anyone bring this over to begin with, or why did we have it? Yes, Nikki.
We've got a lot of it on our property. Well, we did have. The first year I got 200 kilos of pods.
Goodness me.
But it was brought to the island to get the common moth for the apple orchards.
Oh.
Because butterflies stick their proboscis into the flower and it gets stuck. So it kills the moth. like swampast.
Okay. Yeah.
But how I deal with it is cut and paste, which is a glyphosate paste.
Yeah.
So pull out as many of the babies, but the best thing to do is to get rid of the pods.
Yeah, and
So
you can
get
usually
rid of the
bury them
pods.
really, really deep, and then they won't
Yeah.
sprout or whatever. But yeah, just get them, because as soon as that one busts open, you know, one plant can millions of seeds. So really, really frustrating. There is now a biocontrol that's available as well, so which is really good, and I just feel like it's one of those things that should be made free to the world. Well, at least in New Zealand, and yeah, to try and get rid of it. So yeah, it's still, I think, in the beginning stages, but they were applying for permits. You can apply for a permit to get the biocontrol.
So can you tell us a bit more about that?
The biocontrol, no, I don't know enough information at this point. It's quite new, but I did know that Mototapu applied for the biocontrol. So I'm not quite, I'll have to look it up. Sorry, I didn't have enough time. Just to know exactly, is it like a fungus or is it a beetle or, yeah, I'm not quite sure.
How deep do you bury the pods?
Nikki, do you know? Like, I mean,
most of them I've actually taken to the green waste, what do they call it, an amnesty. But I've also rotted them in bags, and then I find rot them in black bags. I've not ever tried burying them.
You need to wait about a year, don't you?
Yeah.
In a black bag.
So one season, if you hang them in a bag, by the next season they're rotted.
Yeah,
okay.
takes it forever.
They are meant to persist. That's why they're doing so well. Another one that's doing so well. Our favorite. Wandering Jew, it was the old common name. I really feel like that's very PC. So it is just pretty much known as Tridescantia. So again, another one that just likes the darkness, shade, and this one, if there's just one little leaf left behind, it'll regrow completely. So, but this one also can be confused with Vinca major. So they're quite similar, and generally how I find them, or I tell them apart, is the Tridescantia has a white flower, and Vinca is a purple flower. So it's also periwinkle. So yeah, so they can be quite similar looking because they blanket the ground. Yeah, so it is hard to do this, I think. They say you can put weed mat over it and leave it there, for several months to kill it. Nothing else will grow too, it'll kill everything underneath it, but then again, with Tridescantia, nothing grows under it anyway. So, really, really difficult. Like if you have a forest, like up here, and then you have Tridescantia underneath, you will not have anything grow through, and if you don't do something about that Tridescantia, the forest will eventually fall over. So, yeah, it's quite nasty, and it just spreads. It's like the kudzu of New Zealand kind of thing. Yep.
I've heard that some people use chickens to
I was
control.
just gonna say that. Yeah.
Chickens to get
Chickens
rid of.
love it.
Yeah.
You can just make a pen around it.
Excellent.
As long as you haven't sprayed.
Right.
Okay. Huh, interesting. I hadn't heard that one. Okay. A lot of people rake and roll. So they sort of start at the top of the catchment, and they work their way down, and just, yeah, try and rake it, roll it up. But you need, like I said, every single last piece of it. Otherwise it'll just, regrow. And so other thing you can do a weed wipe, so triclopyr, because it often does grow by streams, and I've had it from the council that I can use triclopyr near streams. So anyway, and then also there is a biocontrol as well, which there's a couple biocontrols. So there's 3 different types of beetles, and then there's also a leaf spot fungus. So this is originally from Brazil, apparently. And I remember years ago they were talking about a biocontrol, and they sent someone to the Brazilian rainforest to try and find something that could control it, and that person disappeared. And I never heard if they ever found that person again. So it's like, there's been a bit going into this. I don't know, maybe they were carted off by some Amazonian jungle tribe, or I don't know. But anyway, so the fact that they finally got the biocontrol, I was like, oh, well, maybe they either found the person or they sent someone else, or a fleet. So yeah, so I did a biocontrol release of this back in May, and of the leaf spot fungus. And so what's this supposed to do is, the leaf spot fungus is best for areas in gullies because it needs moisture, and that's how the spores spread. And what they do is they, the spores spread from all the different leaves. They get like a yellowish spot on them, the leaf spot fungus, and then they eventually die back. It won't eradicate it completely, but it will control it to the point that other things can grow. So I think that's still, at least it can be under control. And with the beetles as well, they'll never completely get rid of it. But beetles you can't have by waterways, because if there's a flood, it'll just kill the beetles if they'll drown. So, but yeah, so, and it can be expensive. So the leaf spot fungus for about 10 plants, infected plants, it was $6,000. But I feel like the good thing about it is that once you get it established somewhere, it can just keep spreading. So it might be really good, like in a gully area that goes through a number of different properties, because then it can just keep spreading throughout that, and maybe those spores will then blow somewhere else, and so there is the potential with the biocontrol to, it might take a little while at first, especially because when the one that I reintroduced or introduced to this area, we then went on to have like the driest winter ever. So, and it needed that moisture, so it's still alive, but it just spreads slower. So I'm hoping to go back, I've got to go back in 6 months' time to do some more monitoring, and I'm hoping that with the wet it will have spread, and that I'll start to see that die back. Because what I also found with the area that I released it to is I came upon it and I went, wow, this looks completely healthy. Shoot. And, but what I found was that the top leaves looked good, but actually the under leaves were the most affected, and so those were starting to die out, and that's, if you think about it, that's where moisture would persist, like in that lower area. So so I think it will work out to those upper leaves, and I think the next time I go back, I will start to see more of a difference. And then it was on someone's property, but it was through an SCA that just spread, through this whole gully system, and so I can just imagine that will, just keep spreading, which will be great because there's the ground, there's Tradescantia, and then there's trees way up there, and there's nothing in between.
So Jillana, if you had it and you wanted to propagate it, what's the do you know what works and what doesn't work? So if you had a whole lot of it and you put it in a blender which is already infected, you put it in a blender to make it like a mulch, then you could put it into a spray and then you spray it on a wider area. Would it then, in the right conditions, do you think it would take off, or do you actually have to go to the trouble?
I have not heard that blender idea. They do it in the infected plants, I guess. Maybe I would be a bit concerned with, I don't know, maybe they haven't thought about that yet. But usually they just say transplant in the infected plants. And
I know, but it sounds very laborious to do that. I'm just trying to think of a way.
Oh no, well no, it wasn't actually. We just sort of did it we had 2 groups that we did it in, so we had we had very big plants, so we didn't get 10, we got 6, but they were quite big, so that I was transplanting in like an area of about that big, some here, some there, and you sort of did it so at the top so it would sort of work its way down, and so it just, I dug 2 holes, planted it, okay, and I walked off, and I came back 3 months later, so so it wasn't laborious, but I do think with some of these things, biocontrol is the way to go, and they've done lots of study on this, so I mean they've spent like a decade studying this to make sure that it's not going to affect any of our other plants. There's a lot of research. They have to basically prove without a shadow of a doubt that it's not going to spread.
Can you divide it once it's established? And you don't have to have it, once you've got permission to put it in once, you don't have to.
Yeah, like what I'm imagining is that once it gets big enough and it's spreading, I'll dig up those plants and actually put them elsewhere in the area so that it can spread, even further. That's the good thing about the biocontrols, I think, and especially too, like with the beetles. They've got to breed those beetles, so at the moment it's quite difficult to get that biocontrol. It's even more difficult to get. There's a longer waiting list, and I think it was a bit more expensive too. So, because that's something that can die as well. So yeah, well in nightshade, know, the flowers and the leaves. These are the fruits. So basic is small plants, pull them up, and then you can cut and paint the stumps with the Tordon brush killer or triclopyr broom gel. So that's the best way to get rid of those. But it is, you know, birds will be transporting that fruit around, and that's why it can just pop up quite easily. Oh, and that's all I had, because that's all I had time to do before. Sorry about that. But I do have these if you want to pass these around. So these are our guide that we're going to be putting out. It'll be on the website, but we'll also put it around. You still have it. There's so much that I could have put.
Up again, we've gone. Give us the expert's guide.
I didn't realize that it was so bad until we got to that one site. So it's like I said, there's so many more that we could have put. So this is just the ones that I saw most commonly in.
Well, it's the council. The council have their top 10, and they'd be all in their top 10 pieces, plants and animals. You know, those ones and
Yeah.
a few
I
possums and a
would
few
just
rats.
like to take this opportunity to say thank you to